Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I'm excited today to be talking about a topic that I'm very excited about, which is how do you think about areas around inclusion and belonging, which I talked about 2 weeks ago, but also with a lot of the heightened conversation right now about DEI, meritocracies, promoting people based on merit, and then also things like equity and equitable outcomes. So I'm going to talk about all those things and also address some of the things that are going on. I see in the discourse here in the United States. It's been a really crazy past 2 weeks, and lots of change happening, a lot of disruption. Hold on for a second. A lot of disruption, as you can imagine. And as somebody who studies disruption, I just want to give a little perspective on that. So let's get into it. So today I want to talk about just how do you use AI in particular to have inclusion and also to make sure that we are having equitable outcomes, but also being able to have merit be understood and recognized. And so I have a lot of slides today, and I also would love to have you say hello, say where you're coming from, and also share how do you ensure that your promotions inside of your organization are fair? And I think this is a really good question because we want to recognize when people are doing a good job. We want to reward them. We want to promote the best people. But how do we make sure that it's being done in a fair way? And I think this whole idea of fairness is so important because, in the end, what we really want is for people to recognize the work that we do and to appreciate the work that we do and that we get paid fairly and that we get recognized with promotions, awards, whatever it is that we believe is valuable for a fair reward for the amount of work that we do and the value that we create. And this whole idea, I think, of fairness is absolutely crucial to the way that we expect work to be happening. I like to say that we expect our leaders to do two things. We want them to be honest about what's going on. Like, tell us, just tell us. Like, don't hide it from us. We're adults here, and we can handle the news, good and bad. And we expect you to be fair, that we're going to be all treated equally, that you're not going to play favorites with one group or another, that we're going to be rewarded again for the work that we do, and frankly that we have a fair shot, that we can really bring our full potential, our full selves to the work that we want to do. And so here's the place where it gets all kind of messy, and there's a question about what does it mean to be fair. So, what does fairness mean? And I want to explore that a little bit because I want to do this because to understand what it means to be fair, then we can decide what does that look like in our workplaces, and then use the tools, these incredibly powerful AI tools, to ensure fair that fairness is being applied in our workplace. So, what does it mean to be fair? Is it based on merit? And merit means, there are people who are, again, really good, and they should that merit, that potential is being expressed in the work that they do, so they should be recognized. But does fair also mean that everyone should be equal or equitable? So I thought I would just go through a little bit of definitions, and I want to put it in the context of a road race or maybe even golf for those of you who are golfers. I'm a sort of vacation golfer. If it's there, I'll go golf, but I'm not a professional golfer or anywhere close to playing it on a regular basis. But just bear with me here. So merit, the idea of merit is whoever is best wins. So you go to the Olympics, you see people start at the 100-yard dash, 100-meter dash, and whoever's the fastest wins. Equal is if you're ensuring that everyone finishes at the same time. So even if some people started further back. So I really enjoy this when I'm playing golf because I am not a very good golfer. So we play something called best ball, meaning whoever hits the ball the furthest, you'll try your shot, and then you pick up your ball and you walk to the person who's the furthest ahead. And this ensures that everyone ends up at the end of that hole at the same time. We're all putting together, and it's kind of fun because I can then play with people who are much better than me. I'm playing the game, but instead of them taking 3 or 4 strokes to the end of the hole and waiting for me to take my 7 or 8 to get there, we're all just playing together and ending together. Equitable means that people who started further back get the support to compete fairly. So this is where a handicap comes in. So the people who are really good get a handicap, meaning that their scores are going to be adjusted, or my score is going to be adjusted up, so that I can compete with them. So they may take 3 or 4 strokes, I may take 7 strokes, but that's my best. That's the best that I can do, and I can kind of gauge how my best is equal to their best. In a road race, you may have some people getting a little bit of a head start, for example, so that knowing that, for example, I'm very short, I can't run as fast as somebody who's a foot taller than me, so I might get a little bit of a head start. So we're still competing. We're competing at our best, but we're given a chance of a quote winning based on the fact that we have differences starting out. So that's a very quick and very high level way of thinking about these concepts. And I wanted to take some time because you sometimes mess all these things up. And my point here is that we don't necessarily have to think that these things are exclusive of each other. And I do want to make the case that merit and fairness are not necessarily the same thing, because a couple things. Uh, I do believe fundamentally that talent is equally distributed, but opportunities are not. Let me just say that again. I do believe that potential and the talent that is out there for people to do amazing things is out there. Everyone has this amazing potential. It's one of the reasons why my purpose is about maximizing human potential. But opportunities are not based on your background. And so I want to just give a quick story. I was mentoring a group called SEO, and I'll just put some information about them on here because I think it's an amazing organization. I mentored a student who, again, they invited me to come and speak one day, and the student said, "Can you please be my mentor?" She's a writer. She continues to write. And these students are extraordinary. They come from families here in San Francisco where no one in their family has ever gone to college. So they're first time college bound potential students. They're identified in their freshman year of high school, and they're given support for 4 years. Support in terms of weekend and after school tutoring and activities, and then 4 more years of support through college. And so it's an amazing program because the studies show that if you are able to be the first person in your family to go to college, it changes the trajectory not only of your life, but of your entire family. So this is a fantastic program. And what I saw was this young woman who totally nailed it on the PSATs and the SATs with no testing or anything. There was just raw talent sitting in this person. And without this extra support and guidance, you would never have been able to apply to some of the top schools, let alone get a top scholarship to one of the top schools on the East Coast. So a full scholarship. And these are students where the average household income they're coming from is $40,000. And that's in San Francisco. So just to give you an idea, again, what does it mean to be fair for them? They've never had these opportunities. And so this young woman who was able to be given this extra boost to really help her achieve and understand her potential for having impact on the world. So very proud of her, very excited to see what she is going to do in the world. And I think this is the problem that we have when it comes to thinking about merit, that sometimes when we're hiring for the best, it doesn't mean that the best have had a fair shot. And I think this is especially in the workplace. We can be hiring people at the beginning of their career because we think they're amazing. But if they don't get promoted in a fair way because of whatever issues that are going on inside a company, then it's not really fair. And we know that it's not happening because this is the data. that shows that, again, this is from, I'm just going to make this a little bigger. That doesn't work. So this is from McKinsey from 2023, I believe. I'm just going to have it here so you can see the source. And it shows the level of promotion of different groups. So they have white men, men of color, white women, and women of color, going from entry level all the way through to the C-suite. And you can see there is not as much representation of some of those groups as opposed to white men. So white men are overrepresented. Now, this is the data. I'm not saying that these, again, you have to believe that it's probably not that white men are so much better at their jobs than men of color, white women, and women of color. There's something here inside of organizations where fairness, something's broken. And it happens if you look at the manager level, at the very first level of people being promoted from entry level to that first level of management. In particular, white men are being promoted at a much higher level. Men of color, white women are being promoted at pretty much the same level. Women of color are promoted at a much lower rate. So that to me says something's broken in our system. Because if, again, everyone was reaching their full potential and has merit, then something in there is favoring white men and something is disadvantaging women of color. And the numbers used to look a lot worse for white women and men of color, and those have become much more representative, even at that first tier. So what's going on here? I do want to talk about how merit-based promotions and equitable outcomes are related. So again, merit is not really assessed in a vacuum. And it is based on whether you have access to opportunities, these side of desk projects that have, it may be some systemic advantages that some people have, and there may be biases in the evaluation. It's a whole mix of all of these things. And so if the path to demonstrate that there is merit is not equitable, then the process reinforces whatever disadvantages and disparities are already in there, rather than truly rewarding potential and effort. So that just two examples. So there may be some leadership opportunities that are given to a CEO's inside group. Again, and those people who have access to other leaders, and historically it's been mostly white men, they will have more chances to prove their merit. And then also the same thing, that if mentorship and these stretch opportunities, these special projects are given disproportionately to some group, then merit-based promotions based on these sort of opportunities are, again, they're advantaging people who have access to that level of development and visibility. And I just want to give you an example. This bias is not necessarily even based on gender and ethnicity and race. It can be even just based on proximity. So proximity bias is somebody's in the office with me. They could be, again, so I'm working in the office. Somebody is working close to me. I get to know them. They're available. They're right here. I'm going to give them a special assignment. And I'm not going to be thinking necessarily of somebody who's working remotely. And that bias can even extend to people who are working in the same time zone. This is easier. I worked with an organization. I was a chief research officer for a London-based consulting firm. And you can imagine an 8 to 9, sometimes 8-hour time difference would put me at a significant disadvantage because I just didn't have as much time to connect with my colleagues. So I had to work extra hard to make sure that I was collaborating with them. And it's again, this level of proximity can also bias you for or against opportunities that can lead to promotion. So I want to take a break and just see if there are any comments here. Okay, no comments here. Thank you, Jay, for sharing the slides. But let me get into a little bit more about what this looks like too as well. So the opportunities then are, again, how do you use equitable outcomes to support merit-based promotion? So the first thing is to measure whether outcomes are happening. And this is the key, without setting specific quotas and expectations. So this is not about numbers. And I think some of the reasons why things like DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts have gotten a bad rap is because it is there's a perception that quotas are involved. So this is again really much more about just tracking that data to say, hey, are there any patterns? Is there something happening here? What's going on here that we don't see as much representation? Is that truly merit happening, or is there something else happening here? So if you go and look at the data inside of your organization, how are being people promoted? And if there are some groups that are being underrepresented, then what's going on? Why are they not getting the same opportunities? Are we actually doing things on a merit basis? And so, a couple things to address then is to identify if there are barriers to advancement and to, again, provide more equitable development opportunities. And what I mean by that is if certain groups are underrepresented, see if they had equal access to these high profile projects. Are they given networking opportunities? Are they given the same levels of mentorship? And then conduct audits to see if your performance evaluations have any sort of bias. I know this as a woman, having received many pieces of feedback from my managers, that there was inherent bias in them. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, you're nice, or you're too nice, or sometimes you're not nice enough. And I'm like, do you ever give that sort of feedback to your male colleagues? And I get that feedback from both men and women. So what does nice mean? And is that a helpful feedback in terms of giving me that development opportunity? It's not. Sometimes, again, how we are approaching these opportunities to develop people, we all show up with biases. So being aware of them, understanding if there is bias in your development and evaluation and promotion systems is a really important thing. And then a really, I'm going to hide this bullet so that banner so you can see this, and then making sure you're standardizing the promotion criteria. Again, so much of promotion can be subjective, and this qualitative side is important, but it's important also to have very clear, very objective, measurable criteria for promotions to minimize that bias. And again, if the more structured you can be in the evaluation, the less likely that there could be subjective biases. And then also make sure that the process for what you are promoting people based on is really important, because employees need to understand, well, these are the things I need to do. Because if it's not, they see that, oh, it is about cozying up to somebody in leadership. It is about going out with them for dinner and drinks, playing golf with them on the weekends. It's that affinity. What is it that allows you to get promoted? So again, being very transparent about these things, being systematic, I think is not only just good ways to promote merit, it's to ensure those equitable outcomes, but it's also just good business leadership. So I focus on this because it's such an important thing to be doing. All right, I want to go on now and just talk about the AI part of this. I guarantee you it is here. And that is, how do you use tech to create these equitable outcomes? If you believe that you're doing a great job already, fantastic. You can use this technology to double check and make sure that you are. And if you believe that you have some work to do, then these tools might actually help you significantly. So, just to give you an idea of what they can do, one of the things is widening this viewpoint of view that you have around hiring and promotion with AI tools. When we hire people, when we go out and look for resumes, for example, I believe that resumes are one of the worst ways to hire people. Same thing with LinkedIn profiles. They tell you the hard aspects of somebody. They tell you all the things that they have accomplished, education, work experience, but they don't tell you anything about how they think, how they solve problems, how they get along with other people, how they overcome adversity and are resilient and have grit. So, those kinds of things are so important to have, and they're very difficult to understand and see. So, I'll talk about some of the tools that can help you just increase the scope and understand some of these more logical and softer skills that are so important in hiring today. We also see that, are you being able to scale a fair workplace? So, are the opportunities being presented in a way to people where they can find them and access them? And then also, are you creating a culture of feedback, a really good culture of feedback? And I'll just give you an example. When I was running Altimeter, one of the things we realized is that we were awful at feedback. We would put a premium on social cohesion. So we were very nice to each other. And in a space where you're analysts arguing about what the future of business and technology looks like, you need to be able to disagree. And so we did training. We adopted the Center for Creative Leadership's program on giving feedback. It's called SBI, Situation, Behavior, and Impact. And we did training on how to give each other feedback. And so you would hear people going up to each other going, "Hey, is this a good time for me to give you an SBI?" And you would receive it as a gift, that it is. And having that feedback back and forth was a really interesting way to change our culture. And again, just really allowing people to reach their full potential because you're getting constant feedback on what is working, what is not. So one of the things I do want to say is to give you a whole list of some of these tools. I know it's really small type. Again, I'll put up the link to get some of these tools out there. So one of my favorite tools that's been out there for a decade now is Textio. And what it does is it identifies a bias that they may exist in the feedback that you're giving to people, or in your job descriptions. And so having job descriptions that are much more inclusive in their language, understanding that there may be some hidden bias. And I don't know about you, but I tend to just take a job description, copy and paste, update it, and put it out there. And Textio makes you take a step back and say, how is this going to help you attract a certain type of person? Though this language will be more interesting to there. Here's some suggestions on how to change it. So it's really powerful, especially for job descriptions. But I also love how it gives managers a tool to be able to look at the feedback and say, how could this be? Think about this, and maybe this is exposing some bias that you may have. And so I have found it to be extremely helpful for me in understanding when I'm giving feedback to somebody where it's not helpful, that it could be stronger, it's not specific enough, or like I'm going into generalizations. So it kind of keeps me honest when I'm giving feedback, written feedback, and in employee again evaluations. Harvard is a really interesting tool. They acquired a small company called Metrics earlier, I think it was last year, and they use neuro-based AI tools to understand hiring and then also for leadership. So they're looking at the evaluation process, they're looking at prospects, they give them some tools also for the candidates and for people internally, to help you understand some of those softer skills that you have. Plum.io has some really interesting assessments that in particular help with internal promotions, I believe. So identifying potential and supporting fair skills-based, again, hiring promotions. Seek Out is a wonderful talent-based search platform that looks for diverse candidates outside of your traditional networks. And especially if you're a smaller organization, your networks, again, we know that we tend to hire people from within our networks of referrals. Your networks aren't that big, and they tend to be people like you. I'll give an example. When we were at Altimeter, we had a problem that we were hiring way too many women, and in particular Asians. We're in San Francisco. 3 of the 4 partners were Asian, and we realized we were biasing, frankly, we were having a hard time attracting and hiring and keeping, retaining white men. So we made an extra effort to go and use some of the tools out there to expand our referral networks to make sure we were getting as big of a candidate pool as possible. Diversio is a fantastic little tool coming out of Canada that tracks employee sentiments and makes sure that how are people feeling about fairness? Do they feel like they're being included? Do they understand what's the state of belonging inside your organization? And then Gloat has been around for a while. Many larger organizations will use it. they have a talent marketplace inside of an organization. So if somebody needs somebody for a project, they'll put it out there like, "Hey, I need this person with this skill." If somebody's looking for mentorship or wants to provide mentorship, they put it out into that marketplace. And so instead of this informal network inside, it actually is a very visible, very transparent network and marketplace for internal talent in exchange. So these are just some of the tools that are out there already today. There are so many more. If you know of the ones that you have found to be interesting and helpful, please by all means let me know. I would love to take a look at them. Again, as you can see, this is a topic of great passion for me. Now, let's see. I do want to say, by all means, stay in touch. This is my contact information again, and you can also again get the slides where I put them before. I do want to take a moment because somebody had asked me just before coming on. Let's see, it was Jay. So let's see. Okay, he's asking for some it's a long comment, I'm not gonna go through all of it. So you can see this, again, just breaking down of hierarchies, a lot of the work that's out there, and I was just talking, with Jay Bryant right before this because he's very kindly puts out the slides, and he wanted an opinion on what I think is happening, especially with Doge and Elon Musk, tearing apart a lot of these hierarchies inside of organizations, inside of our government today. And it's sort of the Elon Musk playbook that he goes in with like a herd of elephants and just breaks things apart. I saw him do this at Twitter to extent when he took over Tesla. Same thing there. Again, just shining the bull shop is going through and just tearing things apart. And you could say that's great. That's highly disruptive. It's what our government needed. I would be the first one to say, yes, absolutely. Our government needed to be disrupted. Um, Incremental change wasn't going to get us there. Disruptive change is what is needed, and disruption is really hard. And yet, disruption, the way that it's being practiced right now, I think is incredibly not helping because it's disruption without a plan. And if you have seen any of my work, I do strongly believe that disruption with a strategy, with clear outcomes, like this is where we want to be. And these are the steps we're going to take. And it's going to be hard. And we are preparing ourselves for that journey, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's worth going on the journey because this is what we're going to end up with at the end. And I think that's the part that's missing in that there's all this tearing down, but what are we building? What are we trying to build? If we talk about meritocracy as being so important, well, what does that look like? Because right now it doesn't feel very much like a meritocracy. Like, do we have the best person running our top government positions? Or are they really based on, I like you and you're loyal to me and you're going to do my bidding? So, this is my bias against this, my opinion around this. But I would love to see the change happening. I do believe there's more efficiency and that there needs to be a disruption of our government because there are just so many things that need to get done. So much change that needs to happen. But I think the way that is being done is not the way that it could be done. There's so much potential here to be able, and so much expertise and wisdom in our organizations to just wholesale just cut it without thought to what is the thing that we need to build. Do we have the people and the skills to build this future that we want to have? So my opinion on things, and again, I hope that we can get to the point where there's more stability. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that some sort of rationale will happen over the next few weeks to be able to do this in a way that makes sense for the outcomes that we all hope and want, which is that we live in a great society where we can reap the fruits of our labors, that we can live in community with each other, and then also to be able to, again, build something together that's going to be better than what we've had in the past. So that's what I have to share for today. Just seeing if there's any other comments, no more at this point. So let's go forward and talk about next week. I'll be talking about some of the best leadership best practices that I have seen. Again, I am a startup founder, had an exit. I was recently at a startup event in San Diego. I'm doing a couple other ones this month here in San Francisco. And I want to talk about some of the startup leadership best practices. It'll be great for startups who may be in the middle of founding their companies. But I do believe that these best practices are also really important for existing leaders and managers. So I'll talk about some of them from a personal experience. And again, I think one of the things that I really enjoy around this is being able to meld a lot of the work I'm doing around generative AI, along with this long-standing interest I have in disruptive leadership and transformation. So thank you again so much for joining today. I look forward to seeing you next week, and take care and all the best. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in a week. Okay, bye-bye.